This is all you got us. My dad sneered, holding the watch I saved 3 months for. Your brother pays the utilities and groceries. I smiled and responded, yeah, because I set it all to auto-pay from my account. 40 minutes later, my brother slid a note across the table. We've agreed you should move out. That evening, I canceled every payment, froze the joint card, and sent one document to the landlord. By next week, they woke up to an eviction warning with my name nowhere on it. I, 26M, stared at my father's disgusted expression as he turned the watch over in his hands like it was contaminated. The Seiko I'd saved 3 months for, skipping lunches and walking to work instead of taking the bus, suddenly felt worthless under his scrutinizing gaze. My father's words cut deeper than I expected when he dismissed my gift so carelessly. He compared me unfavorably to my older brother, pointing out how much more financially responsible he seemed to be. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I kept my expression neutral and simply smiled, telling him that my brother appeared so generous because I had quietly set up all the household bills to auto-pay from my own account months ago. The silence that followed was deafening. My brother's face went pale, and my stepmother suddenly found her coffee cup incredibly interesting. My father's expression shifted from smugness to confusion, then to something resembling panic as the implications sank in. I had been living in this house for 2 years, ever since losing my apartment during a rough patch at work. What started as temporary help had become a permanent arrangement where I paid for everything while my family took credit for keeping the household running. My brother had moved back home 6 months ago after his divorce, and somehow everyone had convinced themselves he was the responsible one contributing to the family finances. The truth was more complicated. I had been quietly managing every utility bill, the internet, the grocery deliveries, even the premium cable package my stepmother insisted on having. My brother's grand gestures of paying for things were just that, gestures, because the money was ultimately coming from my account anyway. But I had never corrected anyone's assumptions because it seemed easier to avoid the drama. 40 minutes later, as we sat around the dinner table picking at leftover birthday cake, my brother slid a folded piece of paper across the table toward me. His handwriting was neat and deliberate, and the message was clear. The family had discussed my situation and agreed that it would be best for everyone if I found my own place. They felt I wasn't contributing enough to justify staying in the house long term. I read the note twice, then carefully folded it and put it in my pocket. I told them I understood completely and would start looking for a new place right away. My father seemed relieved, my stepmother nodded approvingly, and my brother looked satisfied with himself. None of them bothered to ask about the logistics or timing. They just wanted me gone. That evening, I sat in my room with my laptop and began systematically canceling every automatic payment I had set up. The electric company, gas company, water department, internet provider, cable company, grocery delivery service, and even the premium streaming services they all enjoyed. Everything got switched off or transferred to a different payment method that didn't exist. I also froze the joint credit card account I had foolishly opened to help my father rebuild his credit score after his bankruptcy 3 years ago. Technically, I was the primary account holder, and he was just an authorized user, which gave me complete control over the account. I had been paying the monthly balance religiously, building up both our credit scores, but that arrangement was about to end. The most important step was sending a carefully worded document to the landlord. Since I had been covering the rent through electronic transfers from my account for the past 18 months, there was some legal complexity about my residency status. The document I sent was a formal notice terminating my financial responsibility for the property and clarifying that I had never been an official tenant on the lease agreement. I spent the next few days quietly packing my belongings and arranging temporary accommodation with a coworker who had a spare room. My family seemed pleased with how smoothly everything was going and made several comments about how mature I was being about the whole situation. By the following Tuesday, the first signs of trouble appeared. The internet stopped working during my stepmother's morning video call with her sister. She called the service provider and discovered the account had been closed due to non-payment. My father tried to use the joint credit card for groceries and found it had been frozen. My brother attempted to order his usual lunch delivery and learned their payment method was no longer valid. By Wednesday, the electric company had posted a disconnection notice on the front door. The water department called to inform them about an overdue balance. The cable box displayed nothing but error messages. My stepmother's grocery delivery service had suspended their account for insufficient funds. By Thursday, my father was frantically calling me, but I had already blocked his number. My brother showed up at my workplace, demanding to know what I had done, but security escorted him out when he became aggressive. My stepmother sent increasingly desperate text messages that I read but didn't respond to. On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after they had handed me that note suggesting I move out, they woke up to an eviction notice taped to their front door. The landlord had reviewed my documentation and determined that without my financial contribution, the remaining occupants couldn't afford the rent and had no legal standing to remain in the property without a new lease agreement. Update 1. The weekend brought a flood of attempted contact from various family members and friends who had gotten involved in the situation. My aunt called to tell me how disappointed she was in my behavior, apparently unaware of the full circumstances. My cousin sent a long text message about family loyalty and forgiveness. Several family friends reached out on social media, sharing their opinions about my actions. I decided to provide some context by posting a detailed breakdown of my financial contributions to the household over the past 2 years. The spreadsheet I had been maintaining showed every payment, every utility bill, every grocery order, and every other expense I had covered. The total amount was staggering. Over $40,000 in various household expenses that my family had assumed my brother was handling. The response to this information was mixed. Some relatives expressed shock and supported my position, while others argued that families should handle money matters differently. My uncle called to apologize for jumping to conclusions and offered to help mediate a conversation, but I politely declined. My brother made another attempt to reach me through my employer, this time bringing my father along. They wanted to negotiate a solution and seemed genuinely surprised that I wasn't interested in discussing terms. My father offered to pay me back gradually, and my brother suggested we could work out a payment plan for future expenses. I listened politely and then informed them that I wasn't seeking repayment or attempting to punish anyone. I was simply ending my financial involvement in their household affairs. Update 2. 2 weeks after the eviction notice, my family found temporary accommodation with my stepmother's sister, but the arrangement was clearly strained. My brother had to find emergency employment to cover basic expenses, and my father was forced to confront the reality of his financial situation without my hidden support. The landlord eventually worked out a new lease agreement with them, but at a significantly higher monthly rate that reflected the actual market value of the property. My previous payments had apparently been subsidizing below-market rent that the landlord had accepted because of my reliable payment history and excellent credit score. I received an unexpected call from my stepmother's sister, who wanted to understand what had happened because my family's version of events didn't seem to match the evidence. She had seen the financial records I posted and was confused about why my family had been so eager to remove someone who was essentially subsidizing their entire lifestyle. During our conversation, she revealed several things my family hadn't mentioned. My brother had been borrowing money from various relatives for months, claiming he was helping support the household but apparently using the funds for other purposes. My father had been telling people that I was living rent-free and taking advantage of their generosity. My stepmother had been complaining to her friends about how I never contributed to household expenses. This information helped me understand why my family had felt justified in asking me to leave. They had created a narrative where I was the problem, despite the objective reality being completely different. They had convinced themselves, and apparently others, that they were doing me a favor by letting me stay, rather than acknowledging that I was doing them a favor by covering their expenses. Update 3. A month after leaving, I was contacted by a lawyer representing my family. They were exploring legal options to force me to resume paying their household expenses, claiming I had created a verbal contract by establishing a pattern of financial support. The lawyer seemed skeptical about their case, but was obligated to pursue their instructions. I forwarded all communication to my own attorney, who reviewed the situation and assured me that I had no legal obligation to continue supporting my family financially. The automatic payments I had set up were voluntary contributions that I could cancel at any time. The joint credit card account was legally under my control as the primary account holder. The documentation I had sent to the landlord was appropriate and accurate. My attorney also pointed out that my family's legal position was further weakened by the note my brother had given me requesting that I move out. This document served as evidence that they had terminated our living arrangement, which invalidated any claim that I owed continued financial support. The legal threat ultimately went nowhere, but it confirmed that my family still didn't understand or accept responsibility for their role in the situation. They continued to view themselves as victims of my vindictive behavior rather than acknowledging that their own actions had created the circumstances they now found themselves in. 6 weeks after the initial confrontation, I received a handwritten letter from my father. The tone was different from his previous attempts at communication, less demanding and more reflective. He acknowledged that he had been unfair in his treatment of me and admitted that he hadn't realized how much I had been contributing to the household. He expressed regret about the way my birthday had ended and asked if we could meet to discuss rebuilding our relationship. I appreciated the letter, but wasn't ready for reconciliation. The damage to our relationship went beyond financial issues. The casual cruelty of dismissing my gift, the assumption that I wasn't contributing to the family, and the calculated decision to push me out had revealed something about their character that couldn't be easily forgiven. 3 months later, I had established a comfortable routine in my new living situation and was saving more money than ever before. Without the burden of supporting 3 other adults, my financial situation had improved dramatically. I was able to contribute to my retirement account, build an emergency fund, and even afford some luxuries I had been denying myself. My coworker, who had become a good friend during this period, often remarked on how much happier and more relaxed I seemed. The constant stress of managing my family's financial obligations while receiving no recognition or appreciation had been weighing on me more heavily than I had realized. The final piece of closure came when my stepmother's sister reached out one last time to inform me that my family had finally achieved financial stability in their new arrangement. My brother had found steady employment, my father had started receiving Social Security benefits, and they were managing their expenses without external support. She seemed to think this information would make me feel better about the situation, and in a way, it did. Knowing that they were capable of supporting themselves made me feel less guilty about withdrawing my financial assistance. It confirmed that my contributions had been enabling their dependence rather than helping them build independence. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for people is to stop shielding them from the consequences of their choices. A year later, I occasionally wonder if I handled the situation correctly, but I don't regret my decision. The watch my father had dismissed so cruelly still sits on my dresser, no longer a symbol of rejection, but a reminder of my own worth and the importance of setting boundaries with people who take advantage of kindness.